YouTube is not going to like this video. This isn't gonna be some dopaminergic stuff flying around like crazy trying to grab your attention. This video is gonna be just pure value. Hey, my name is Seven, and I help people fix their energy problems. When I say energy, I mean internally and externally. The energy we feel inside and the way we communicate using energy, the energy we have and how it portrays us. And the reason that people care is because it really impacts our ability to do anything with other people. In this age of AI and like everything being online and fakeness and craziness, what cuts through the noise is the way we relate to other people. And that affects everything from our relationships to our career ladder to the business we build, the ability to sell, the ability to get new jobs, the ability to get out of tough situations. Pretty much everything in our life is about how we relate to other people. And for a little while, we've been able to use some kind of product to do that for us or help us with that. And now, with AI being able to replace all of the non human, the things that are fundamentally human things like energy, the energy we have, how we use it, how we communicate with it, we really need to lean into these skills. So I wanted to basically, in the next hour and a half, because that's all the time I have, try to fit in as much as I possibly can into one super educational video. I was going like, how do I just help people? And so I started taking a bunch of notes, page after page after page. Not loads of pages, because I also have some slides I'm going to share with you, but I'm basically just wanted to give you as much stuff as I can. How much can I just use to educate you, to help you fix your potential energy problems, to understand your energy level and why you might be getting in your own way, and just give that to you. So again, this isn't going to be some flashy thing. I'm going to try to put the timestamps in the description so you can skip ahead. You can come back later if the video is too long all at once. But if you want to build more energy, to build better relationships or build a business, sell, negotiate, public speaking is a big thing that I help folks through. Like whatever it is that requires your energy and that you need to communicate to do, this video is going to be for you. With that being said, we're just going to jump into it. Again, no crazy like edits or cuts or anything like that. Strap in to learn as much as you can, because it's going to be a fun ride. First thing I want you to understand, once in a while we're going to look at some slides. The first thing I want you to understand is this slide right here. These are levels of what I call energetic fitness. Now, all you need to understand for now is that your energy appears on three different big levels. The social, which is the physical, the external. The emotional, which is your state, how you feel internally. And the spiritual, which is an even deeper level of the internal. We're not really going to talk much about the spiritual. It's very personal to different people. It really just means being in the now and being able to connect with other people. Your connection to others is one of the things that fundamentally makes you human. And our energy is a part of that connection. We'll briefly cover the why in just a minute, but that's essentially what you are, is you exist on these three levels. We're going to cover the other two. They're super practical to your professional and certain areas of your personal life. And so we're going to go deep into that, particularly the emotional and the social. Now, there's one thing I really want you to understand, which is that everything is energy. Everything is energy, right? Science has figured out that atoms are just vortices of energy moving around each other, and they kind of combine together to form all the types of energy that we see. Is it light energy coming from outside? Is it physical matter? Whatever it is, all of it is just energy in different levels of density used for different things. Electricity, powering all this stuff. Again, energy, just in a different form. Everything is energy. You, therefore, are energy. The quality of that energy, how you cultivate that energy, if you bother cultivating it, if it's healthy and free flowing and of a high vibration, or if it's kind of dense and you're feeling down or you're angry. We'll go through some of these emotions and why they're important, but how you feel, your mental health, and I put them in brackets for a reason I'll come back to in a minute, that is super, super important. It ends up dictating everything. On this like social level, this social bubble, the social circle of the energetic fitness, the way we communicate externally, how we show up, how we relate to others, how we communicate with them, how we pitch and present and build relationships. If We do all the physical things right. Like, you know when someone smiles, but you can tell it isn't real. If you did only the physical things and you felt none of the emotional weight behind it, maybe they actually felt terrible, but they forced a smile, usually you can tell. In fact, there's another saying that I love to go through, which is to understand tension, or more specifically, to understand what happens when you go into a room and two people have been fighting and you feel the tension. We've all been in this kind of situation where you go into a room and two people have been fighting. They've been yelling at each other, whatever, and we all know the saying that it feels like you could cut the tension with a knife. Right? We all know this saying, a hot knife through butter. You can like cut through it so easily, like it's butter. Well, what about that tension? Right? If you could cut through that tension with a knife, it's so thick. What are you cutting through? There isn't a physical piece of butter or anything else for that matter to cut through. So what are you cutting through? That tension feels so heavy, you can feel it like it's physically real. What is it? That tension is energy. And energy, again, is everything. Energy is very, very real. It's a very real physical thing. We can't physically see it with our eyes. We see the manifestations or consequences of it. We see the people acting in a certain way. We see the light, the electricity. Well, you kind of see electricity. Hopefully you're not seeing electricity. It might be kind of dangerous. But anyway, we can see the physical manifestations of energy within all things, especially within each other. What we often don't realize is that that makes it very physical. We can't see the energetic particles themselves, and so we think that that isn't physically real, but it is. Because otherwise, what would you be cutting through? And this goes to a principle that's really interesting to me. So going over to this slide, this is something I like to do with people in person. Obviously, we're not in person. So to illustrate to you, I've kind of drawn it out here. Every single one of us has our own energy field. This is really important for your professional life, okay? You need to remember this. I'm giving you some context. We're starting right now with context. Then we're going to go through some big problems, and then we're going to understand some specific solutions. And what we're doing right now is we need to understand that we all have our own energy field. Each of us walks around with the energy that we are all around us. Then what happens is we come into contact with another person. Now our energy fields start to overlap and merge. So for example, if you go into a meeting or a negotiation, or you try to sell to somebody through your work or business or whatever, your energy field is now interacting with theirs. Similarly, when you are getting into a fight with someone, where you could cut that tension with a knife, your energy field interacts with theirs. And it's almost like you begin to fight. Your energy levels, well, fight if it's negative. So those energy fields almost start to collide together, to work together, to interact. And now your energy fields are interacting with each other. If you're both in a very good state, you're continually giving each other positive energy. If both of you are fighting, what happens is your energy almost starts to go into survival mode. You see, there's a difference between being in survival mode and being in creation mode. Creation mode are lots of good feelings, states, energy, emotions, which we'll actually go through in just a minute. And survival mode is your survival experiences and emotions, fear, anger, frustration, sadness, whatever else. When you're cutting that tension with a knife, those energy fields begin to also exist in survival mode. And so they begin trying to take energy, take energy from each other. I'm yelling at you, I make a point, and it's almost like you lose some HP. You're like, you're hurt. And I've taken some energy from you. And we keep going until someone's energy field is completely depleted. And often that tension just kind of releases into the surrounding space, the surrounding area. That's why when two people fight, it feels really heavy in the room, and it's almost like you have to open a window, right? That window is because the energy is to release, because the air genuinely feels more dense. It's more full of heavy energy. And so if you understand that the way that you always interact with other people, or the way you interact with other people, will always, always, always be dependent on the state that you're in, how you're feeling, and the fact that it will always happen whether you like it or not, then you must admit that it is your duty to cultivate the best possible energy, the energy that will most get you the result that you most want. If you are trying to talk to someone because you're interested in them, right? You may be trying to flirt with someone, you're getting your flirt on, whatever, and your energy is bad, they'll pick up on that, and you will be less attractive to them. Asterisks, because there are situations where someone who's unhealthy wants to resonate with someone who's on the same energy level as them, and so two unhealthy people find each other. That's a different thing. Generally speaking, like attracts like. So if your energy level isn't very good, you'll attract people whose energy level isn't very good. This especially breaks down if you A, want a healthy relationship, or B, we're now talking professional scenarios where you are trying your best to sell to a potential client or get a raise at work or whatever. Good luck if the other person is interested and they're like, what does this person have to offer? And you say all the right things, but you say it in a way that is just awful because you feel awful, and people pick up that energy and they go, this isn't resonating. You will always give out the energy that you are currently feeling. The fastest way to get that, or to get through the noise to exactly what you're feeling and what to do about it, is by understanding emotions. Now, there's a saying I love about emotions, which is that emotion is emotion, as in energy in motion. All of your emotions are energy in motion. Fear is your energy in motion towards the survival experience that we call fear, that makes you afraid, that makes you tense, that makes you fight or flight or whatever. That is the quality of that emotion, and it moves your energy in the relevant direction to manifest, or to make manifest, to make physical, to make apparent whatever that emotion wants you to do. And so here's where we now have two different, essentially, buckets of emotions or quality of emotions. One is survival emotions, and the other is creation emotions. The word escaped me briefly. When you are living in survival mode, you are, exactly as it says, surviving. Any of your emotions or emotional experiences that exist just to keep you in the survival, just to keep your physical body alive, could be called a survival experience or survival emotion. Fear, anger, stress, sadness, frustration, lust, and pretty much anything born of ego. These are all survival states. If you are primarily experiencing that in any moment, then in that moment, you are in what we call survival mode. Pretty much anything that isn't that is what we would call creation mode. This is where you're experiencing love, gratitude, passion, a desire to give, excitement, most passion exists in a more creation experience. Imagine you are the creator of your life. Imagine you are the person who exists to birth the most beautiful potential that you have to give to this world, to create the life you most want, to bring in the results in a healthy way that you most want, all the healthiest, happiest results that you and those around you most want, to help others in the way that they need. This is creation mode. Anything that is purely born of that is creation mode. Anything that doesn't exist just to keep your physical body physically alive is creation mode. You want to be channeling these really important states as much as possible. Why is that the case? I've got this concept that everything that is a resource on this planet exists on a scale from most limited to most unlimited. Most unlimited end of the scale is money. Money is a resource that is theoretically unlimited. Yes, we've only got so much of it right this second, blah, 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 blah. But theoretically, you can always make more of it. Practically, you can always make more of it. So theoretically, it is infinite. Over at the most limited end is time. We all know that we've only got so much time here on planet Earth. We all know that every hour, every day, every moment we choose to spend doing one thing is a time we're choosing to spend not towards another, and we never get the currency of time back. We also don't know how much of it we're going to have. So time is really precious. Energy is interesting because it's somewhere in the middle. As opposed to this being a linear flat line, it's almost more like a curved line where energy is both in the middle of money and time, but it's also kind of on this higher plane. Because remember, energy is everything. Everything. So it's almost this sacred resource that we have this responsibility to use as effectively as possible. We need to spend some time to get some energy back, depending on if you're introverted or extroverted, if your job or whatever currently occupies your time is fulfilling you or draining you, depending on if you have money to unlock other people doing things you can direct your energy. Depending on these things, the amount of energy you have, how quickly you get it back, all matters. Attention is a form of energy, somewhere between time and energy, I would say. So attention is also a type of resource. But fundamentally, everything comes back to these three, with energy being this special, sacred resource. Going back to this interaction diagram quickly, there are a lot of places where this appears, okay? So I gave you some example earlier of like when you speak to a person, you interact with a person, maybe you're flirting at a bar, maybe you're trying to make a sale to a customer, whatever. This happens basically anytime you have cultivated or captured someone's attention. So what I was just saying is that attention is a resource somewhere between time and energy. Whenever you have attracted anyone's attention, your energy and theirs begin to overlap. This exists from far away. So yes, there's a physical energy field that's close, but an element of connection appears if you lock eyes with someone from across the bar, okay, across the room. Your energy is now already overlapping, because where attention goes, energy flows. This is a really important saying. Where attention goes, energy flows. It's why attention is such an important part of this kind of like between time and energy part of that scale. Because whenever you place your attention on something, your energy goes towards that. Your attention, your conscious attention, your awareness is what you use to place that energy to do whatever you want to do with it. Why do I say this? Because when you understand, professionally speaking, that wherever attention goes, energy flows. Anytime someone's attention is on you, their energy is flowing to you, and yours, therefore, is flowing back to it. So when I'm doing public speaking or I'm helping other people, helping train other people to do any element of public speaking, one of my favorite sayings I like to give them is that a good speech feels like a one-to-one conversation. That's because energetically you begin to mirror. Energetically, we'll go over these kind of things later, these like mirroring. I know I'm throwing some jargon at you. Your energy and theirs is now interacting. Your energy and theirs is now fundamentally linked. And as a result, you've captured their attention and your energy is now bound together. And they will begin to do this thing called mirroring, where they will feel the way you do. So if you're on a stage, for example, people will look at you, and if you're feeling tense, they will begin to feel tense unconsciously, unless they're very consciously aware. But if they're giving you their full attention, they will feel the way you currently do. We'll go over, I'll try to go over, looking at time, what time permits, more about why this is important later, but essentially, this means you can use that to your advantage. You can understand that if you want someone to feel excited, so they leave your talk, your speech, your pitch, maybe you're pitching to an investor and you want them to feel excited, you need to feel excited. Because they will walk away feeling the way you have allowed them to feel. If you do not feel good, if you do all the right physical things because you trained what you're going to say and you're like reading a script off in your head, but the whole time you felt nervous, man, people are gonna feel it. And they're gonna go, I don't know about that person. I don't know about them. It happens on video too. It's not quite as strong over a camera, but it does still exist. So I just had to take a pause to take a deeper breath and stretch a little bit, because I wanna make sure my energy stays good and healthy and keeps flowing. There's one final piece of this energetic contextual puzzle that I want to give you. And it's around what different belief systems say about energy. I really love the ancient Eastern belief around qi. Ancient China created these things like Tai Chi and Qigong, these practices that physically look like very slow martial arts, but really are about moving your energy around. Because again, if everything is energy, then that energy exists in your body, but it can get stuck because I stay like this on my phone all day, right? So when you move and you open up and you let things flow, I'm not doing real Tai Chi, but you get my point. The energy can start to move. Now, these practices specifically would say that we have three big energy centers. We have the lower, middle, and upper danqian. And these really roughly translate to our gut, our heart, and our brain. In other words, these are the three places that you most need to leverage and utilize and focus on if you're going to improve your energy level. There is a physical body thing that needs to happen. There is a heart-centered spiritual element that needs to happen. And there is a mind-centered mindset part that needs to happen. That's where those three energy levels, to go back to this, that's where this comes from. This says a lot of things. There's more on my website about this, but I'm not going to go into this in depth right now. I just really want you to understand that energy exists on so many levels and has for so long as being this really important sacred resource, described in different ways worldwide for millennia. But everything from these ancient practices to, again, science looking at atoms as vortices of energy, everything is energy, you are energy, your duty is to cultivate that energy. And I want you to understand that because now we're going to go into the social and then the emotional part of how this physically manifests so that you can work on your skill set and your mindset. Normally, I would include heart set, which is another one of my words for spiritual instead, but for today, we're just going to focus on those two. I know I said this video probably says something like everything about energy, but I lied, I guess, a little bit. We really only got time to go into those two. They're also the most practical. So to go into a little bit more about the problems with poor energy. I've started to allude to this, but there's a few specific things I want you to understand. We would, generally speaking, classify energy to be in two different types, two different states: catabolic energy and anabolic energy. Catabolic energy means destructive energy, and anabolic means creative energy, constructive energy. Now, I just outlined the difference between survival mode and creation mode. Maybe you're noticing a pattern here. We can live our lives in more catabolic, destructive, survival states where our energy will match, or we can live in more anabolic, constructive, creation states where our energy becomes as useful as possible. The minimum viable requirement, right, the MVP for those constructive states, that anabolic energy, is a person of responsibility. Someone who takes a good amount of responsibility, who wants to win in a good way, in a way that's useful for everyone, even actually useful for everyone, so win-win is even further up along the scale. That is the first sign that you're in a good place energetically. The problem with poor quality emotions, with the catabolic, with this destructive, with this survival emotion is it's draining, right? If you and that other person are fighting, you ever remember you've been in these kind of situations where you're yelling, you make a point, you're like, you feel good in the moment. The other person, again, is like, they've lost some HP or something. What that actually is your ego being fed. Your ego goes, oh yes, I want a point. Oh yes, I've got some energy. But the ego is the only part of you getting that energy. You've ever opened that window, that tension releases, you leave, you immediately feel what? You feel drained instead. Why? Because what destructive energy does is it destroys. Even if you feel like you've won a heated argument and you've taken all this energy, your fundamental self has not taken that energy, you've expended it. And the energy you got back is destructive, so it's actually taken even more. It's a bit like drinking caffeine, like a caffeinated drink, to try to hydrate, because caffeine dehydrates you. So you actually just become more thirsty. So what this destructive energy does is it actually takes energy from you instead of giving it to you, no matter what you do. And of course, it means it's taking from others too. So you just steal energy from yourself and from others, and it goes to nothing. Do you think that if you want to walk into a room and negotiate with an investor or a client, or negotiate a pay rise with your boss, that if you are in a place of self and other destruction, you're going to get the most useful result? I highly doubt it. Don't get me wrong, sometimes through win-lose scenarios, we can make that physically manifest. I made the other person feel like shit. As a result, they gave me the thing I wanted. Yeah, I've won. There are negative things in business. And at the end, we're actually going to cover some of the things to be aware of, okay? But you, generally speaking, only want to work in this space of constructive because there are a lot of risks, and you almost are guaranteed a worse quality result by giving in to these destructive emotions. In other words, there's another saying, actually, I should say, that I like, which is that the ego's logical conclusion is destruction. So we think about the extreme end of the conclusion. We've all got a little bit of ego, but what's its extreme end conclusion? Take unsustainably until there is nothing left. So what is left has been destroyed. What I've taken from has been destroyed. The ego's logical conclusion is destruction. So the best possible scenario is some kind of win-lose. Do you want to be going around the world existing only in win-lose scenarios, where you're leaving other people losing? Because guess what? Those people might need to come back in the future. You might need that relationship. And if they don't like it, they shut you down, or they know how to use your energy, it'll be lose-win. You'll have lost, and it will be your fault because you will have given in to creating some kind of destructive scenario. How this physically manifests on these three levels, right? If we look back at these three levels again. On the social level, this looks like someone who is withdrawn. Someone with poor energy socially isn't able to communicate, isn't able to flirt with the person, or go to the events and make new friends, or talk to the clients. I know this very well because this was my whole life for a decade or more. I had really, really intense levels of social anxiety. I couldn't get out. I couldn't network. In my first business, my co-founder had to do all of the sales and I was basically the operations monkey chilling in the background, right? That nobody knew, that no one, if I did meet someone, I was so awkward, they didn't respect me. So I almost hid away from it to make sure it didn't make the business worse. I was so socially anxious that I was just withdrawn. And if you think you can get good results while being withdrawn, just by forcing yourself in the moment. Again, some people manage to force themselves in the moment, but they're probably not fully withdrawn, or they're summoning up energy in the moment. And that is possible. It's not the best place to be, but it's much better than having really poor quality, destructive energy, socially speaking, externally speaking, because what you're left with when this gets taken to its extreme is just withdrawing from everything as opposed to communicating with good energy. And no results come from that. I'm case study zero. I'm ground zero. So believe me on that one. Second, emotionally, you give in to self-destructive or egotistic emotions. You feel worse even if you're able to get some kind of good physical result. You feel bad and you feel more destructive. You give in to your ego, and that ego's logical conclusion is destruction. So socially speaking, with poor quality energy, you are always going to be getting the worst, or a worse version of whatever result you want. Maybe you still get a decent result, but isn't the best version possible. The way I like to think about this is an equation. It's the difference between 1 times 0.1 or 1 times 10. Your minimum possible is not even 1. It's this teeny tiny number. And your maximum possible is so many multiples times what that minimum possible number is. It isn't 1 times 2. It isn't you get both these 2 times 2 is 4. No, it's almost exponential. Spiritually speaking, you would be disconnected from other people. Poor energy means I'm disconnected from the world, from myself, from others. It isn't just about physically building relationships. It's about feeling like you're a part of this world, right? We are living in a time where people feel incredibly disconnected, sad, lonely, low, all kinds of really challenging situations. And it's tempting to look at these physical phenomena as just being physically bad. You know, people aren't going and doing the thing. But actually, it's their energy level. I think it's deeper and more fundamental. When your energy level says, stay small, hide away in the basement somewhere, don't go talk to people, you get birth rates declining, and you get people reporting loneliness, and you get greater rates of self-harm and suicide. And having been through some of those things myself, really intense loneliness and lots of these really negative or destructive thoughts, I get it. It is the natural conclusion when you're stuck in these states, and I think we need to have a lot of empathy. At the end of the day, generally speaking, no one is coming to save us except ourselves. In life, no one is coming to save us. Yes, we should help other people, and yes, people can help us on our journeys. If we do not allow ourselves to embody a more energetic potentiality, if we do not allow ourselves to become the potential we are meant to be, and do whatever work we can to cultivate that greater energy so that internally and externally we show up in the world doing the best and feeling the best that we can, we will always do ourselves, and therefore the results that we could create, a disservice. Whatever gift you have for the world, you need to be giving it to the world. In other words, if everything you are is energy, why waste it? Why not cultivate it so that you can direct it towards great results, right? Good people, as opposed to being with people who drain your energy. Good reasons to be in a place instead of wasting your time and energy in the wrong places, the wrong people, going to I used to be in this entrepreneurship space where people go to events, like entrepreneurship events every single day. Unless you're at the very beginning of your journey, that is a huge waste of time and is actually a big red flag. You need to be only going to the places that give you the best energy and the best relationships or potentiality to improve that energy or the results that come with them. Why would you put yourself in unhelpful or emotionally damaging or energetically damaging, but again, emotions are energy in motion, why would you put yourself in energetically damaging situations? Some kind of sticky situation, or embodying an emotional state, allowing yourself to feel bad all day. Look, I get it, we all have off days. If it's been a while of me not feeling great, it is my duty to do what I can to improve my energy, because a leader does not have poor energy. A leader cannot allow themselves to have poor energy. Maybe you're an entrepreneur. Maybe you're just the leader of your house. We are all the leader of our own lives, and therefore we are all leaders. It is our duty as leaders to cultivate the best energy possible. Do not allow these problems to rule your life, please. Okay, so now what we're going to do is go through two parts of this solution: the social and the emotional. How to improve the social element, how to improve the emotional element. Again, by social in this context, I mean your physical expressions of how you communicate and how you physically relate to others. This is essentially your public speaking, your communication, your networking, your pitching, your presenting, your negotiation, persuasion, sales. Most of this exists professionally, but actually a lot of it exists personally. Again, do you have the social capability, the physical external communication ability to go and talk to a random person, to make a friend? If you really want to connect with someone, can you do it physically? This is a challenge for a lot of people. So what we're going to do is go through a few physical practical solutions that you can learn to be able to communicate better, to show up with the energy and the presence you deserve to have to get those results out in the real world. Again, this is the one thing AI can't do for you, okay? We're one of the few. So you best get used to needing it if you want to stay relevant. Okay, so next I'm going to introduce you to a concept of where people energetically resonate with you when you're communicating with them. Generally speaking, people focus on three core things: your body language, your tone of voice, and the words you physically say. When you are communicating with them, you're essentially going through a process, which is you think of the thing to communicate, so you generate the creation of the communication. You then send the communication out, so energetically it travels through sound and through vibes and all the other things. And then it is picked up and received by the receiver and processed by them. This is a step by step. Every single one of these steps, something can go wrong. And there are three big things that happen during all of these steps. First, all of the elements of your body language start communicating stuff. So you're sending across how comfortable you are, and you're sending across if you believe what you say, if you're actually happy, because we can tell when a smile is a real one and when it isn't, right? That was an awful smile. Right? We can tell because we've spent millennia, many millennia of evolution building up the ability to communicate with each other, both non-verbally and verbally. And because language changes, but our non-verbal stuff doesn't, how we energetically communicate non-verbally is very important. In fact, it is 90 something percent of what people actually focus on will be the way you say something and your body language while you're communicating it. It's like the 55-38-7 rule, where only 7% of what people actually focus on is exactly what you say. Now, when you're on a video like this, or when you're speaking to specific parties, like let's say investors, let's say you were an entrepreneur on Dragon's Den or something, Shark Tank, and you were communicating with people, communicating with investors what you do, they are going to be very focused on your words. But generally speaking, we pick up these three things in that order. There's another way I like to look at this, which was coming up when I was doing research for my TED Talk. I went through TED's feedback, so the videos on the official TED YouTube channel, and what they called it was a moment of connection, I believe. Remember earlier I mentioned that even when you're on a stage, you are connecting with someone else, even if you're not physically there next to them. What happens is when you are looking at someone, and maybe you're on a stage or someone's on a stage looking at you, people start to use these things in our brains called mirror neurons, where as a result of you being sometimes physically, literally on a pedestal, a stage of some kind, people start to mirror how you feel. So they're focused on these three things, and they are trying to connect with you. For this moment, a moment of connection has taken place. Okay, now imagine you went up to someone and you tried to connect with them and they shut you down. How would you feel? Your energy must be open and bigger and able to take in, which means smiling and feeling good. Most importantly, if you are tense and stressed, people will mirror that and they will feel that way too. I mentioned earlier that you can use this to your advantage. If for whatever reason you want to make people feel bad, and there are reasons you might want to do that, okay? So if you're giving a speech, for example, you might want, for effect, to do something where you make someone feel small and tense and bad, and then make a big change and make them feel open and different and better. So I love leaving people, and we're going to do this today actually. I love leaving people with a little meditation, visualization, something to make them feel really good. At the end of all of my workshops and talks, I did the same thing at my TED Talk as well. You want to energetically allow people to flow in whatever allows you to create the best results for you and for them. So they will be mirroring you. You have this moment of connection. You want to use it as effectively as possible. Generally speaking, like attracts like. So if you are energetically resonating at a great frequency, you will attract the audience members who are most like that. If you're not resonating so great, you will put people off. Please keep in mind that just like you're watching this video and I'm doing my best to just give you information and value, right? That means I want to respect your time. I don't want to waste it. I hope that some of these things are useful learning for you. And in the same way, whenever you've captured someone's attention, whether it's a 10-minute speech, a 30-minute keynote, a 3-minute investor presentation, whatever it is, someone has given you their most finite resource, their time. And you are energetically connected, which is this sacred resource, remember. So you have this responsibility to use that gift you've been given to make the best possible result, to not waste their time, to not waste their energy, and not waste your own either. It's a matter of respect to use it as effectively as possible. With that understanding, there are a few little tips and tricks I want to give you to make the most of your ability to communicate with others. First of all, I want you to understand that what happens is when we meet someone, is we go through this process called cognitive algebra. This is a process for the assessment we make using visual recognitions. So Whoever is listening, remember, it's a multi-step process where someone gives out information, someone else receives that information. The listener will take in all that information being communicated, then interpret it through their paradigms, their experiences, before generating a result that goes back to the other person. It's this constant multi-step process, back and forth and back and forth. That is all communication. The listener takes that information in, and whatever their paradigms are, whatever their feelings or experiences are, whatever their biases are, whatever maybe their language barriers are, their culture, whatever, everything about how we process information and make sense of the world is like this filter through which everything you say will go. The first trick, therefore, is to understand that the way that you give information, the way that you communicate, what you communicate, all of it must take into account the other person. And we'll go through some preparation stuff later, but do you understand who you're speaking to? What they want, what they like, what they appreciate, what they need to hear? If not, while they're doing their cognitive algebra, you will probably say some stuff that isn't very useful for them, or that somehow confuses them, that they might misinterpret or whatever. And so you filter through with some form of negativity. And so you're very likely, or unlikely I should say, to get through that filter exactly the way you initially intended. You must take everything about the other person, or as much as you can know about them, into account so that you can give them the most useful communication possible. When you understand this, you understand that they're going through this algebraic process. As soon as they see you, they do all this mental math, and they generate some responses as a result of whatever assumptions they make. You understand you need to reverse engineer that. Are they maybe making assumptions about your clothes, about the way you're speaking, the speed you're speaking at, what you're talking about? Anything that someone might be able to judge about you is something that you need to make sure you are expressing effectively. Energetically, are you showing up with the skills and the energy behind those skills to most effectively make use of the cognitive algebra someone else will be doing? This becomes really important when we take our next principle into account, the blink factor. The blink factor essentially means that in a split second, in the time it takes to blink, which is about half a second actually, so literally a second split in half, people, like a picture, like a frame, they take everything in and the brain just makes these things. And it's something like 76% of our first impressions are actually pretty accurate. Okay, so the brain is actually really good at first impressions, at understanding people to a decent enough level as a result of the first impressions in half a second. So people, what they'll look at in that half a second unconsciously is your gaze, your eye contact, your gestures, your facial expression, your touch, your spatial behavior, your grooming, actually, so how you smell, right? How you look, how you dress. In the time it takes to blink, all of this happens and gets put into that cognitive algebraic process where that becomes part of the filter, or all that must, I should say, gets pressed through this filter as well as whatever you're saying. So the majority of the cognitive algebra essentially happens in that split second in the beginning, and then every time you communicate anything with them, they're doing more and more and more cognitive algebra. Adding all this up together, what you essentially get is this very, very, very fine-tuned filtering machine. If you have no awareness of it, and you don't build up the skills to make use of it, your energy might fall flat. If you don't energetically show up, and you don't communicate well, communicate with good energy, and communicate with intelligence behind that energy, with the physical skills, the body language, the tone of voice, the spoken words, then you'll probably be doing a disservice, and you also might fall into a bunch of traps, such as offending someone else or whatever. This makes all this sound really complicated. The good news is you can habitually learn to communicate and continue to improve these things. But before we go into what some of those things are, I want to share one more third thing with you, which is that the biggest myth in communications is that communication has taken place. Because remember that communication is this multi-step process. Boom, then boom, then boom, then boom. I generate something in my head, I give it to you, it travels through the airwaves, you receive it, you process it, you generate your own response, you give that response back to me. That's a multiple step process. Something can fail at any point or can misconstrue the message at any point. That's why sometimes you're talking to someone, you think you've said something to them, and they respond with something really random or misunderstanding, and it's just like, what is going on? You're just like, I swear we're having two different conversations, or it's like speaking to a brick wall. That happens because so many things can go wrong in the communication process. So understanding these three things together, your duty is to make the most of that pie chart of that body language, tone of voice, and spoken word to most effectively get through this cognitive algebraic blink factor process, this multi-step communication process, so that whatever result you want can actually happen. So let's go through each of those things in turn. First of all, body language, the biggest part of this. There are some specific things that you want to notice around your body language. Your posture. Are you standing still? Are you standing up straight? If you're sitting down like I am, is your body language open? Essentially, remember this mirroring concept from earlier? Everything internal gets mirrored externally, and everything we do externally gets mirrored by the person receiving and then gets picked up by them. In other words, internal goes to external, goes to someone else's external, goes to someone else's internal world. And so how you feel, therefore, translates into how someone else feels. And if you are closed, if you're, and there are some specific things let's actually go through to understand this. If your posture is closed, which means shoulders down, hunched, forward, then people will feel that way. And if they have enough presence of their own, they won't immediately start to do those things, mirror those things, or feel that way themselves, but they will notice or understand that they feel the way you feel and that they don't like it, right? It's this Maya Angelou quote of people remember what you said, people will not remember what you said or what you did, but they will remember how you made them feel. People won't know why they don't like you as much as they think they should. They'll just know that you didn't make them feel great. And it will be because your energy isn't great or how you use that energy isn't great. And so essentially what you want to do is work on your posture and make it as open as possible. That means shoulders back. It means chin not sticking out like this, but kind of just normally up, right? Think about a confident person, how they would hold themselves. That means arms taking up space and looking good. And importantly, as part of this posture is your hands. Where are your hands? What are your hands doing? So sometimes I'll ask this exact question to people. I'm like, where are your hands? Someone's presenting and you can't see their hands. That's really bad. If you can't see someone's hands, maybe they're in pockets, or if we're doing this on Zoom, they should not be off screen. Maybe they can be down here, but every now and then you should still bring them up so people can see them, because people like knowing open gesture, open hands. It's actually the first thing that we look for when we are talking to other people, or we're first meeting them, I should say, for the first time. We want to know, is this person holding a weapon that they might throw at me? If they have open hands, okay, they're safe, they're a friend. Our brain, despite not needing to do this for a very long time, still does this naturally, because these are millennia-old baked-in patterns that are part of our evolution. We need to respect them, okay? So open hands and use them to gesture and allow it to flow into your body languages, your open the rest of your body language, which should be as open and confident looking as possible. Those hands might need to do something too. So for example, do you have a clicker? Maybe you've got a presentation behind you, boop, boop, boop. What are they doing? Are you holding anything like a prop? Maybe you have a prop you're going to throw at the audience or something. Whatever it is, they should be purposeful. So I have this saying, make it purposeful. For example, in my TED Talk, I moved around too much. I've only got little clips of this because at the time of recording, the video hasn't come out. I watched my own footage back a lot to scrutinize and improve. I moved around a little too much. Moving around purposefully is super important. Moving around too much without purpose starts to feel jittery and people can't pin you down. Everything needs to be purposeful. So if I'm holding a prop, fine. If I'm holding a clicker, fine. But what am I exactly doing? So some people, they'll point at the screen with the clicker to go boom, as if it's like a magic wand and they're waving it at the screen for effect. It doesn't work. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't really help create any result. So what we need to do instead is to remind ourselves when we're practicing, especially, to make it purposeful. Everything must be as purposeful as possible. If I'm going to use a clicker, I'm going to use a gesture, it needs to be purposeful. I'm going to do this kind of thing with my hands, open and good, because it creates what I call the orchestra of you, where these three things, body language, tone of voice, and spoken word, all work together. I am only gesturing at the right time in the sentence to make a good point. And there are three big things that you need to know about thing. Each gesture matches whatever is being said. The final thing here is, where are you looking, right? Are you making eye contact with everyone? Are you looking at your screen? There are a few things that you never want to do. You never want your back or your head to the other person. Like if you're walking around, it still needs to be facing the other person. Remember this part of energy. This is why this part of energy is really important. When you create a connection with someone, I said at the beginning that even if you're not physically close to someone, if you're facing another person and you're looking them in the eye, you're smiling at them across the room or whatever, you now have a connection. If you move, right, you break that connection. So right now, I'm sort of facing my screen and the camera's here. That actually isn't great. It's not the most ideal. So sometimes I'll try to turn here, but I probably forget to do it. In person especially, you never, ever, ever want to make this mistake because you want to be facing the camera. It creates an energetic connection. The brain goes, oh, this person is speaking to me. So if you're standing in a 3 at a networking event, you're all kind of facing in the middle. If someone else turns only to speak to another person, the other person might leave or they might turn to someone else. And so you go from a group of 4 or a group of 3 to a group of 2 2s or a 2 and a 1, and the 1 leaves because they don't feel like they're a part of the conversation. It's also an easy way of shutting someone down if they're trying to talk to you and you're not interested in them, which probably happens a lot if someone's trying to date or make new friends or whatever. I don't really like this person. I'm going to shut my energy off from them. You never, ever, ever want to shut your energy off from whoever you want to give your energy to or to receive energy from. If you're in a sales pitch or negotiation or whatever, you want to be fully present with the other person, which means your body language, your eyes, your gestures, they all need to match to be fluent, to feel like a part of one big orchestra and be directed towards whoever you're speaking to. Let's talk a lot about body language, because it is the most important of these different things, but we're now going to move into tone of voice. So, tone of voice. If you are breathing effectively, which I have not quite been in this video because I'm trying to cover a lot at once, but if you're breathing deeply, you're speaking from your diaphragm with power, the lowest part of your lungs, then what you get is a greater projection. So for example, I'm pretty good at this. My throat isn't as strong. So when it's really loud, it's really hard to hear me. But if it's dead quiet, I could reach the back of a 400-person room, depending on how the room's built, but most of the time. Because I'm speaking probably maybe even too much from my diaphragm. Down here, there's power. Boom! And this is super, super important to get the tone of voice right, because if your tone of voice is super monotonous, if it doesn't rise and fall where it needs to, if it doesn't project properly, you are left sounding weaker. We all know someone who sounds a bit like this, where they're kind of scared of doing stuff. If you ever let your voice break in that way, people will unconsciously assume, because remember, blink factor, cognitive algebra, people take in all this information, boom, make a first impression, oh, that person's weak, or, oh, that person, when they say that particular point, is nervous. You've maybe even noticed some of these things about me, okay? Because I'm just talking at you. I'm not trying to make a perfect whatever. This is super, super important. Clarity. I have been speaking fairly fast in this. You do want to speak slowly enough to be actually heard. And there's a principle around confidence here where, generally speaking, you don't want to speak too quickly, because the faster you speak, the less confident you seem. Why would she need to speak so quickly if they were confident in their stuff? When you speak too fast, it looks like you just want to get it out because you're not sure if what you're saying is right. There's places where that doesn't work. For example, Gary Vee. He speaks at lightning pace because he just wants to get the information out. He's so passionate about it. Would anyone say that Gary Vee isn't confident? Right. So what this is essentially showing us is that there is no one hard rule. A lot of the things I'm saying to they're general advice, they're general good practice, but it's not. There's no one hard and fast rule about something that applies to every situation. Because what matters most is actually that principle I said on the last kind of slide, the last image a minute ago. Make it purposeful. Is it purposeful? Why are you doing it? If your speed is for a good reason, it's to maybe make people feel more quick. Usually the faster you speak, the faster people breathe, which creates some tension and stress in the body. And maybe you want to do that again. Remember, maybe you want to get people into a certain state for a certain reason. If you want people to feel urgency, for example, then you need to start speaking more quickly. But don't do it if it isn't for a good reason. Otherwise, you start to look a bit weird, or you probably will fall into a trap of making not as effective of a result. A question for you: what might show that you're confident when you're speaking? We talked about eye contact. We talked just now about the speed of speaking. These are great examples where if you pause effectively, if you raise your voice only when you need to and it drops, maybe even to a whisper when you need it to. When you're able, in other words, to conduct this thing I've been calling the orchestra of you, when you're able to conduct it effectively, you start to look more confident. And generally, you feel the way you look. So if people go, oh, that looks great, usually is because you feel great too. Because again, remember, everything is energy. There's a saying, as within, so without. So when you have worked on your energy, your ability to express energy or to show energy effectively, to be energetic in the moment, socially and skill set wise, your body can almost be tricked into feeling that way too. So if you were nervous going onto a stage, but you do these things right, you can actually kind of trick yourself into feeling good. And you're feeling good on a stage and whatever, and that can help enormously. Because then you start to feel more confident. So you look more confident, you feel more confident, then that cognitive algebra takes place, sees you more positively, people get a better result, they're more open and receptive to whatever you're trying to share. And if you're doing something like I am here, where you want to just share value with people, great. And people can take that too, and people are more open to that. So, final thing now, when you're crafting whatever you're going to say, are you showing your experience? The most important things you've noticed, specific skills? Are you helping people understand why you? So for example, earlier I told you a bit of my story, right? The reason I care so much about energy now and helping people fix their energy problems is because my energy for most of my life was terrible. I was sad and lonely and had this stiffness and this really awful social anxiety, really awful depression. And I managed to turn it around by working on my energy level, by understanding I was existing in a destructive place, by socially, emotionally, and spiritually working on being in a higher level of energy, expressing differently, feeling differently, self-hypnotizing, which is the right word because I'm trained in hypnosis, and all hypnosis is self-hypnosis. So I'm almost helping myself to move into a place of greater clarity. That is part of my why. Why me? And by sharing this with people in the right place, the right time, that helps cut through some noise and build credibility. People might look at someone who does all the right things, or the right things in air quotes, because again, there's no one size fits all solution necessarily. Someone might look at all of that and think, this is not great. But then you hear someone with greater credibility who speaks with conviction, like they really know their stuff, and they have the specific reasons to back it up. And then it's almost like the meaning of what they say becomes transformed. If everything I was saying to you was built on no experience, then who am I? This person says this confidently, but he's full of shit. Okay, well, TEDx speaker and training people to do it and accredited in hypnosis, that means that some people go, oh, so the reason you're saying that is because. The reason that you know that that works in the brain is because you were specifically trained and accredited to understand how the brain works, or whatever. Your conviction and your credibility are a huge part of this. And the question I like to ask is, how can you work this into, in this slide I say pitch, but really any speech or conversation, an elevator pitch, whatever, in a smooth way? Smooth sentences are one of my favorite things to do with people, because people often find that you can communicate in one sentence what you thought you had to use 2 or 3 or 4 to communicate. For example, instead of saying, I am a public speaker who sold a tech startup who has 10 years of experience in consulting, and I'm building this team with 4 really incredible PhD students who are great at this thing. Maybe you're giving an investor pitch, for example. I see this time and time again. You don't need all 4 of these things to be their own unique sentence and their own slide. For example, you could say in one sentence and in one slide, in my 10 years of experience consulting, I noticed these big challenges. And so what I did is I went and I got together 4 other team members who all have specific experience. We put our heads together to figure out how we could build this. And what we came up with when we did our research was fascinating. So we started to test it, and that became our initial traction and the 1,000 early users we have. We picked up so much so quickly that we now have to raise, and that's why we're talking to you. That is like 3 or 4 sentences that cover what was otherwise going to be like a whole minute of waffling in an investor pitch, for example. These are the ways you kind of cut out time, remove waffle. This is the kind of thing, and what I'm doing now, this video you're watching, is a lot of waffle, because this is how this works. But you can go through and cut by making points in a smooth way, and it gives you this higher level of credibility because you're not wasting time. The reason why speaking faster, makes you look unconfident is because you are almost, You're almost stuck in a place of, I just need to get it out. And when you give too much words, when you say too many words, too much context, too much garble, you also look similarly unpolished. In both cases, you look unpolished, or you can look unpolished. So you want to do the thing that makes someone go, ooh, okay. So some final wrap-up points of essentially everything I just said means is that you want to pronounce words clearly and correctly so that they're received as effectively as possible. You want to remove anything you don't need. Any of that waffle, like I said, will just make things seem worse. So remove. And if a sentence is important but it's taking too long, think about how you can make it smooth by working the points into bigger overarching sentences, like the example I just gave you. Final most important thing is you must understand who you are speaking to and what they care about. Their demographics and their psychographics, which means their context, where you fit in, what you look like, the assumptions they've made about you, right? That cognitive algebra. If you show up wearing a wrinkled shirt like I have today, what is the assumption someone is going to make about you? These things are super, super important. When basically the bigger the problem, the more it is, or the bigger the thing you're trying to solve and do, the more important it is. So the bigger the stage, the more of a pedestal you're put on, the more that everything gets magnified. It's like putting yourself through a big magnifying glass in front of people. Being aware of how other people work and think and feel allows you to tailor yourself to whatever will most help them receive the message. You never want to give someone an excuse when you communicate to them to fail to pick up the communication, because that is part of the communication. Communication is not just saying the thing. It is all of the expression and all of the receipt of that expression. And if you give anyone excuses to not receive that expression effectively, you have essentially shot yourself in the foot. So be careful with that. Final note is on preparation. As Ben Franklin said, by failing to prepare, you're preparing to fail. A very cute quote. I love myself a good quote, as you might have noticed. Thinking about that preparation, I just mentioned kind of demographics and psychographics. Everything needs to be focused on who you're speaking to. So for example, with this, I know that I am speaking to and most interested in speaking to leaders who want to improve their energy. That means entrepreneurs, people who want to communicate, people who want to be in charge of their own life, people who maybe feel stuck the way I once did. And so I'm putting myself in those shoes, which kind of means the shoes of the way I used to feel, or I have experienced a lot of feelings of in the past. That's really important because it changes what I'm going to say to you. In this case, it hasn't changed it loads. But if you run a business, say, you're going to say very different things to one set of customers to another. Maybe between your customers and investors, again, you're going to say some pretty different things. And then do everything else you can to prepare. If you're speaking on a stage with a presentation, what does that stage look like? Is it elevated? How much space do you have? How big is the screen? Where is the screen going to be relative to where you were standing? So, for example, in my TEDx talk, I was standing in front of the board. I was standing in front of the screen. So as a result, I kind of tried to move out of the way for some of my slides, but it didn't actually look very good. You want to know ahead of time, where am I going to stand? How important are my slides going to be? Should I even use them? How your space looks might be part of that. How are people going to be thinking? So not just demographics. Are they older or younger or whatever? Also psychographics. Do the people think in a certain way who are going to show up? Objects, do you have props? I used my water glass as a prop earlier. You can use lots of props in lots of ways for lots of things and make a lot of impact. Again, amazing. Your challenge is going to be to do pre-research about the people and the space, because all content is defined by a context. So if you change the context, the content needs to change too. It automatically does, and if you're not aware of it, you are probably missing a trick. Okay, so that wraps up the social part. We're going to whistle through the emotional part because we need to wrap this up soon. Remember that emotional was pretty much about the state that you're building, the quality of emotions, emotion, energy, and motion. Are you experiencing survival or creation emotions? So the question you need to ask yourself is, what states do you want to build and access regularly? To give you some context, is that everything on the emotional level, on the internal energetic level, starts at the state level. Are you in a state of the things we described earlier that are really positive, things like good passion, things like confidence, things like excitement and love? Or are you in a place of survival where it's fear-based, it's anger-based? My experience is that the survival emotions people most commonly experience are fear and anger. So I'm going to move away from this thing because I'm afraid of it, or I'm going to go towards destructively because I'm angry. Sometimes sadness and things like that are also a part of it. So what states do you want to build and access regularly? It's really important that the state you build is positive and for something, okay? So there's a big difference neurologically from going towards something you do want and moving away from something you don't. When you move away from something you don't want, you're still thinking of the thing. So we've all now, a lot of us now have heard this saying, don't think of a purple elephant or whatever. And what comes to your mind? A purple elephant. Because the brain has to think of the thing to tell itself not to think the thing. In other words, it cannot work in negatives. The brain only works in positives. When the brain only works in positives, you must understand that if you tell yourself, I don't want to feel sad, sadness is the thing that comes to your brain. I don't want to be angry anymore. I have anger issues. It puts anger into the front of the brain, the front of the mind. And now you are stuck thinking of the thing, the negative thing. So what you want is instead to just remove it completely, put that to one side, and think of the positive thing that is for what you want. Not against the thing you don't, but for the thing you do. So if fear is a challenge, maybe what you want is to feel confident and calm instead. So think about the states you do want to build and access regularly. Calm, confidence, humor, focus, energy. These are some great examples. The things I said earlier as well, like love and excitement and passion, these are great examples. Basically anything that is positive and for something. You must ask yourself which of these states you want to build most regularly. Now, I kind of just started using this word states, but essentially this is what your emotions are, right? Now that you understand emotions, their importance, you need to understand that all emotions are states. Your state, calm, confidence, fear, anger, this is energy in motion. energy and motion towards whatever you want, towards the destructive thing or the constructive thing. And so your job emotionally, internally, is to build the best possible state and then to be able to access it whenever you want. What we call this is anchoring, where whenever you felt that way in the past, you want to so deeply remember it, visualize it, experience it. We're going to do a little bit of this at the end. To give you an example, you want to embody that so fully and deeply that it becomes really easy to summon up that experience. I said earlier, some people can just summon up energy. I have a theory that this is actually easier for extroverts because you get energy from being around other people when you're more extroverted. And so you can feel not great, go see a person, and then boom, I have this wave of energy. And it's much easier to do. This is great if you're extroverted. If you're not, or you are, but you're not having a great day or whatever, how do you summon up energy? You have to first choose the state that you want to embody, that you want to be able to access easily. I'd recommend just choosing one to start with if you've never done this before. And then you want to anchor it. An anchor, for example, could be touching two fingers together. So, for example, when I do this, when I touch both of these two fingers together for myself, I feel a wave of calm coming over me because that is what I have anchored there. So even now, I feel a little better. I feel a little more calm, having just done it for you as an example. So what you really want to do is choose it and then go through a meditation that we'll do in a minute. But essentially, you want to so deeply experience in all five, if possible, of your senses. Sometimes touch, taste, or smell are not so easy, but you essentially do what you want to feel, you want to see, you want to hear, as much detail as possible, all the things around this experience so that you can easily summon it up. This is because of a few neurological principles, okay? Neurons that fire together wire together. So if you fire the neuron of touching two fingers together, for example, at the same time that you're firing the neurons of remembering a time in a tropical island paradise, at the same time that you're remembering feeling calm and you can feel it in your muscles, then whenever, and you get used to this, your brain over and over and over repeats this. The neurons that fire together wire together so that I just have to do this and boom, all the other neurons in my brain for calmness just fire off automatically. Now, it's important to understand that what we're really doing here, we're not removing the ways you used to feel that you don't like. We're deactivating them temporarily. The old muscles that you're used to using, the old ways you used to think that are maybe more negative, they don't immediately disappear. They are a pattern. And what you're essentially doing is interrupting the pattern. What we're describing here is a pattern interrupt, so that instead of thinking of the negative thing, you go, I'm going to think of the positive thing instead. The negative, the pattern, likes to creep in and pretend that it is who you are. Okay, there's a quote that I love that I shared in my TED Talk, actually, which was, be careful of your thoughts because your thoughts become your words. Be careful of your words because your words create your actions. Be careful of your actions because your actions become your habits. And be careful of your habits because your habits create your character. Be careful of your character because your character creates your destiny. I know that's a mouthful, but essentially, our patterns create our whole lives. And our patterns are made up of the unconscious thoughts, words, and actions that we take regularly. They become habits, they become patterns. So the pattern likes to creep in and pretend that it is who you are. But you do not have to be your patterns if you interrupt the pattern by pausing, going, what do I want to feel instead? I want to feel insert thing here, calm, confident, humorous, whatever. Use your anchor, such as touching two fingers together, and then whoosh, I'm experiencing this energetic state, this emotional state instead. This essentially sums up what energy is. All of this is energy, right? And if you remember that mirroring is taking place, that when you're on a stage, for example, or you're saying hi to someone and you shake their hand, that immediately they are going to pick up how you feel. Then being able to so easily put yourself in a different state, even if you haven't worked very well on the skills we just went through in that kind of social part, that physical external manifestation experience part. Let's say you shake someone's hand and you're feeling really good, and you're still, a little bit awkward, maybe a little bit hunched, but you are genuinely feeling good. Your body's kind of responding well. they will pick that up and they'll go, oh, this person's doing really well. This person feels good. I like being around this person. And things just become so much easier. So, for example, maybe you're going on a date or something. You could still be a bit awkward, but if you put yourself in a good state, the date will go much better because the other person will be able to pick up good energy more easily, bounce, bounce, bounce. So, you have a lot of options available to you if you want to improve at how you communicate and how you use your energy for communication. There are some other really little simple tips and tricks before we end off today, and that is you can treat all this a little bit like a game, right? Imagine you're at school and you're doing like a fake, drama presentation of some kind. You don't need to make all this super heavy. Oh, I need to put on the best the best face. I need to put on the best, handshake and do these things. Yeah, they help. But if there's this lightness and this freedom to it, you're like, I can just have fun. I can just do the things. I can just pretend that I'm this super confident person. And I know there's some people that adopt personas. Maybe they put on a big hat. And when they put on the big hat, they're the persona of their most confident self or whatever. You have the ability to play with this and have fun instead of taking it too seriously. By serious, I don't mean being interested and urgent and ambitious. What I mean is just making it really heavy and serious. So have fun with this. Treat it like a little bit of a game, because guess what it is? You're playing the game of social communication and emotional manipulation. Really, you're manipulating your own emotions positively, helpfully, to feel the best you can and give the best results while you're feeling it. Before we go into our meditation to end this off, because we don't have long left today, I want to give you a few things to beware of, because now that we understand energy, we understand how we can use it internally and externally. You must also understand the way that other people will try to use these things maliciously. So manipulation isn't necessarily malicious, but you're manipulating your energy and how you speak. Others can do it to you, and maybe they don't have such great intentions. The first thing is to beware of is vampires. There are people who will unconsciously drain your energy. Maybe they're constantly negative. They have a bad mindset. They have a bad character. Bad used loosely, okay? There isn't really such a thing as good or bad, but maybe unhelpful, maybe a bit more destructive. Maybe you don't really respect it. Do you really want to be around these people? They try to pick fights, maybe, so they create that tension, that yelling for no reason. They're living in that survival mode, okay? Those survival emotions too often. And please understand, this person could be you, right? Are you someone who shows up and is always constantly negative, hurting other people, saying unhelpful, hurtful things, whatever it is? If yes, you need to be aware of that. Energy vampires exist, people who will drain you. The only thing you can do is raise your energy level so that it doesn't affect you too much, and remove yourself from them a little bit so that it doesn't, so that they can't drain your energy. Again, your energy is a sacred resource. Accept it, or protect it, sorry. Accept it and protect it. Final thing is beware manipulators. So there are energy vampires. There are also people who will manipulate you, your energy, use their energy to manipulate you. There are people, for example, on Wall Street, right? Wolf of Wall Street. These like absolute sharks who just like move in. They know how to pressure point you. They know when, oh, their energy levels dropped. Boom, let me move in right now. There are some really manipulative, malicious people on this planet, unfortunately. When you understand that what they're doing is they're not physically punching you in the face, they are moving in to steal your energy here, steal a little bit there, slowly wear you down, then you can understand how to stop it or avoid it. Because again, you can leave vampires behind, you can try to leave sharks behind, but sometimes in your career especially, or sometimes in like the various social games like dating or whatever, there are going to be people who manipulate you consciously or unconsciously. You want to counter them. So if you resonate on a higher energy level, generally speaking, it's hard for someone to steal your energy, because like attracts like. If you have this full presence, and we didn't go through the spiritual element of this, but that's what I'm describing is presence. When I say the spiritual level is presence, if you're fully present in the moment, vibrating at this high energy frequency place, and you're treating it like a game, you're just kind of being silly with it, that means people can't really hurt you or offend you or make you small. You're present in the moment, which means when someone tries to, for example, go, okay, look, we're just going to do this, and I know we can, and they use all these sales tactics. You can just be very present and think, is that what I want? Instead of getting sucked into it. And you're aware of the tactics they might play. Then what you can do is you can play the game, you can have fun. They're not really able to take your energy. When you operate at a higher energy level than the person speaking to you, remember that those two energy levels, those two energy bubbles that intersect, right? If we go back to it now so I can show it to you, these two energy levels, what happens when they intersect is if they're operating on the same level and that's a negative or destructive place, they can kind of start to take from each other. I'm trying to take your energy, you're trying to take mine, back and forth. If you operate on a higher vibration, a higher energy level, very constructive, very present in the moment, and someone is trying to take your energy, it's a bit like trying to take a vacuum cleaner to a wall. The wall isn't going to move. The vacuum cleaner will just waste electricity trying to vacuum it up. So your job, your responsibility is to operate on this higher level frequency. There are some final benefits of this that I want to really hone in here. How are you going to climb a career ladder with poor energy and energetic skills? What about making sales, building personal and professional relationships, speaking on stages, building a personal brand, which is very important in 2025. It's a big part of business, for example, or even just hobbies. So many people are trying to build a personal brand. How are you going to negotiate, persuade? How are you going to deal with energy vampires and energy manipulators? If you do not understand how to socially, emotionally, and spiritually deal with your own energy, cultivate, discover your best energy, and understand other people's energies. So this pretty much brings us around for today. I have literally 3 minutes before I need to go. So we're going to do a very quick meditation. This is something where you need to get really comfortable, okay? You're going to embody your most energetic self. You are this person already deep down, okay? And you just need to get used to being them. So get comfortable, close your eyes, and just follow my voice. This is going to take literally 60 seconds. I want you to relax the whole of your head, your face, your eyebrows, your jaw. Everything starts to relax. Your shoulders, your torso, your legs and your feet, your arms and your hands, everything becomes super relaxed and everything drains out as if into the ground below you. And I want you to sit up or stand up, wherever you prefer, as powerfully and energetically as you can. Your shoulders move back, your head raises up high. You either sit with strength, or if you're standing, either way, plant your feet firmly on the ground, taking up space, as much space as you need to feel comfortable and confident and powerful. And imagine almost like a tree, roots sprout beneath your strong feet into the ground below you, deep down into Mother Earth. You are a part of this earth, as grounded as possible. And notice your breathing become very powerful. Deep in and out breaths, powerfully, slowly, with strength and depth. In and out. This person that you are feeling now, you are embodying your future self that you are the majority of the time, in the future that you most want to have. This is a person that you already are. Remember a time when you have felt this way in the past and really experience it. And if you want to keep this meditation going, you can choose an anchor, such as 2 fingers to touch together. And when this feeling, this experience is as strong as it can possibly be, this current body feeling, this past memory in your mind, you can use that anchor, touching those fingers or whatever you're using together, to really deeply experience. And now, fully feeling this, as alive as you possibly can, project into the future what the rest of your life is going to be like if you can show up in this way. when you are as powerful as you want and can possibly be in every single situation in your life, breathing deeply and powerfully, fully in, fully out, standing with this incredible posture, this openness, and just attracting the best possible energy to you. This is your full potentiality. Press that anchor together again one more time to cement this even more deeply and even more powerfully. And if you want to keep this going, you may do so for as long as you want. I'm now going to quickly end this off. So if you want to pause or come back into the room with me, you can. Welcome back. That meditation was a little bit rushed. I'm going to put out some longer ones maybe soon. And again, you can pause and just keep going through that experience over and over for as long as you want. Thank you so much for being here. I know this video is a little bit long. Hopefully the chapters and things like that helped, and hopefully you took away some notes, again, about physical skill set, the mindset you need to have, how to use that mindset, and even a little bit into that spiritual, that heart set part of things. I run some things where I help people do stuff like this. I wanted to just give away as much information for free. It can help a lot to have someone along the journey with you. If you are physically based in London, in the UK, I've got a program for professionals, leaders, managers, entrepreneurs, business leaders, founders who want to level these things up massively, which is a 3 full-day program. It gets into so much depth, okay, with so much physical practice. I can also work with folks one-to-one, and I have more free resources. All that stuff's down below. If you want a little nudge, want some extra help, or you want a big overhaul, hey, here I am. And if you're not ready for that, I've got more free stuff, or I hope you just found this super, super helpful. You're amazing, and you're going to create all the results that you want. You deserve them. Whatever you can imagine is what, generally speaking, you can create. The thing that often holds us back is our energy isn't very fit. It isn't at a good level. It's unhealthy, or it's stuck, or it's focused on the wrong things. And you can make them all directed towards the right things and accelerate. That's what consciousness is. It's an accelerant towards the life you are meant to have and all the impact you're meant to have in this world. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Lots of love. And here is to your success.